This is the next drawing assignment. This one is called sofa elevations. What I will ask you to do is externally reference the sofa that you've already drawn, be able to bring that in, be able to manipulate it so that you can use it to construct the elevations. So external references is a new concept that I'm introducing today. I'm also introducing layers. And in this example, we are going to use layers to help set up the drawing for printing purposes. Now, we use layers for a lot of reasons, but for this drawing specifically, I want you to place objects on layers based on the line weight that they're going to have. And the line weight is determined by how close they are to our view, so that's the foreground, or how far away they are to our view. And this close and far is very relative. So let me just zoom in here for just a moment and show you. Well, first of all, these are the layers, and I will show you how to set these up. And then I want you to see how the objects that appear heavy, which are then closest to us, they're going to appear in the foreground. They're going to have this color 6, which is magenta. And if you can see in this elevation, you can see the seat cushion as well as this armrest. That's going to be closer to us compared to the backrest. And I'm not sure if you can see it here, but the line weight is slightly different. If I zoom in just a little bit more like this, you can start to see the difference in the line weights. I also want to show you how to add dashed lines because this is hiding behind the armrest at this point. And this is the seat cushion that is on the back side of that armrest. And it protrudes here just a little bit. I took a little bit of artistic liberty just to extend that out slightly. But then I want to see how that looks as it moves back and it's hiding behind that armrest. So I'll show you how to add the line weight as well. So this is the assignment that we'll focus on today. So let me go ahead and begin, and let me switch over to AutoCAD here and show you, right? This is my completed assignment. I just want to share this out with you so you can see, you know, I'm adding notes and I'm also using the layers as I mentioned. I want you to look up here in my layers panel, and you can see that I have a few layers here, some extra layers that I need to put in for my notes. But then you're also going to see some layers in here that are referring to my sofa drawing. And these look just a little bit different. As soon as I start this drawing all over from scratch, that might change a little bit because I might use a different sofa and rug drawing file. Okay, let me begin. I could, if I wanted to, simply click on this plus sign here where it says new drawing, but I'm not sure if it's using my AutoCAD drawing template. So I don't click on that. I always go back to my Start tab, and from here, I click on the new dropdown. I select my AutoCAD drawing template. If you don't see the drawing template there, go to Browse Templates, and then select the AutoCAD DWT file from here, and then click Open. So I have a new drawing file. One of the first things to do, change the units. So I'm going to type units and enter. From here, the length type, architectural, precision to the nearest 32nd. Keep it at decimal degrees and then set the precision to the nearest hundredth, 0.00. And then click OK. After that, I need to save this as. So I can type save as at the command line and enter. Or I can come up here to my application button, hover over save as, and save this as a drawing. And I'm going to place this into my folder. File name, first initial, last name. And the name of this one was going to be Sofa Elevations. Now I'll go ahead and click save. And you'll notice I have my sofa and rug drawing in here that I will access in just a moment. So I'm going to click save. My personal preference is to turn off the grid, but you don't have to. And then I'm going to zoom out a little bit so that I can see my UCS icon. And remember, I want to draw in this area where the X and the Y coordinates are positive. If I go to my example, my drawing really consists of these two elevations. I do not need to redraw the sofa because I already have it. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to begin by basically drawing the line that represents the ground where my sofa will sit. So I'll start that line at 0, 0. So I come back to my drawing here and I will go ahead and draw a line, and I'm going to type L, enter, specifying the first point, 0, 0, and enter. Now I'm going to take this line straight across, and I need to turn ortho on. And the length of this line doesn't really matter because I can always make it longer or shorter. But for now, if I make it around 6 feet in length, that should be all right. So I can simply click here because it's at 6 feet and then a few extra inches, or I can just type 6 feet and enter. Either way is fine. And then I'll enter again to terminate the command. This is the general area where I'd like to begin drawing my elevation of the sofa. But before I draw the elevation, I would like to borrow the plan view that I have already drawn. To do that, to borrow that, I will bring in what is referred to as an external reference. My definition for an external reference is the image of a drawing file inside of another drawing file. It's not the actual file itself, it's an image of it. It's very similar to all of us on our phones. If I go outside right now and I take a picture of a tree, it is not the actual tree. It is the image of the tree. That's my analogy. For external references, I always use the keyboard shortcuts, and we in AutoCAD have coined the phrase XREF. That is short for external reference. So what I'd like to do is type XREF and enter. Now, when I do that, this window will open. And in case you didn't notice, I already had it docked on the side of my screen. So I'm just going to hover over it and open it up. And you'll see that it's showing me my current drawing file name. And now what I'd like to do is reference the image of another drawing into this one. So I go to this icon where it says attach a drawing, and I click on it. I click on the drop down. And you can see I can attach a drawing, I can attach an image, and then a few other file types. But I'm going to stick to DWG. So I'm going to click DWG. And now I'm prompted here to select a reference file. So the reference file I want to select is sitting in my folder right here. And the file that I want to select is this one that I drew during the last session. And I'd like to go ahead and click open. And now what happens is I have this dialog box where it says attach external reference. It tells me the name of that file. It shows me the preview. And then I want to make sure that it is an attachment at this point. That's fine. If I look here at the scale, since I drew it at actual size 1:1, then I want to bring it in at actual size 1:1. I don't change that. The insertion point. I can specify that point on screen, or if I turn this off, it's going to place that image at X and Y equal to 0. And that's where I drew it. So I'm actually going to go ahead and leave it like this for now. For the path type, I want to make sure that I select no path. And the reason for that is because this file is sitting within the same folder, so it doesn't need to look outside that folder. So no path is fine. The rotation, I'm going to leave that as is, and I'm not going to specify on screen. And then this information here for the block unit is grayed out, so I can't change that. So I'm going to leave all of this as you see it on screen, and then I'm going to click OK. As you can see, now if I zoom out, or actually if I zoom extents, so I type Z, enter, E, enter, and then I'm going to zoom out, this is the image. This is what we call now an external reference. And as soon as I selected that external reference, you see up here in the ribbon how I have different options. So this is not the actual drawing file. It's the image of my sofa and rug drawing file inside of my sofa elevation drawing. Since I already have this external reference selected, and you notice there's just one grip point down here, I indicated that I had drawn the line because I want to project my elevation. I want to project lines down from my plan to the elevation. I'd like the elevation here. So I'm going to take this plan, this external reference, and I'm going to move it. And I can use that grip point to move it. So I'll simply click on the grip point and just take it straight up, and ortho is on. So I'll move it up about, let's say this height. Looks like anywhere between 3 to 4 feet up. And then I'll click. It's still highlighted. And what I'd like to do now is just focus on this 3-seat sofa. The other information is not important to me right now. I simply want to draw the side elevation of the sofa here, and then I also want to construct the front elevation, which I'll get to in just a moment. While I have it selected, I can come over to my ribbon and select Create Clipping Boundary. Keyboard shortcut for that is X Clip. So I'm going to click here, and I'm prompted now. I didn't move my cursor fast enough, so it stays right here. It's prompting me, what do I want to do? I want to create a rectangular clip. Yes. So I click on rectangular. And now I'm prompted to select the first corner. So I'm going to pick this corner right here. I'm not going to touch the sofa. I'm just going to be at a little bit of a distance away from it. I'm going to click one time. And this is not a click and drag. This is just a click. And then I'm going to specify the opposite corner and click here. Just like that, I have clipped the image, not the drawing file, the image of the drawing file. In the example or the analogy I stated earlier, if I took a photo of a tree and I print that photo out and I decide that I'd like to crop some of the information out, perhaps fold the paper or even cut it, I can do that with some scissors. So this is the same concept here. I'm clipping this image. And now I'll tap the escape key. Well, actually, before I tap the escape key, what I want to show you is this. I can take that rectangular area and invert it by simply clicking on this arrow, invert this X clip boundary. So I can click, and now it's going to show me, or at least it's supposed to show me the opposite, but it didn't quite do that. And we don't normally use that invert. I usually leave it alone. But I want to show you something else that's interesting here is I can take this clip and now I can pick one of these corners and actually drag it up and drag it over and control the extent of that clip. I can still do some things here, but I'll bring it back and I'll click right here. Let me turn ortho off. and just bring it into that area. Tap the escape key, make all that, the grips go away. And then the last thing I'll do here is I'm going to turn off that outline that you see there, or that X clip. You would type in X clip frame. And before I'm even done typing, it already comes up as the option. So I want to select X clip frame. And you see where it says it controls the visibility of that clipping boundary. So I'm going to click on that. And it wants me to enter a new value. And the new value here is going to be 0. And that 0 will now make that frame disappear. So I click and it goes away. It's still there. It's just not visible. Watch. If I click on the externally referenced file, you see the grips still appear, and I can still take the grips and manipulate them to have it show me more information if I wanted to. It's just that I'm not seeing it, and it helps. So then I don't have to be viewing so much information on the screen. Before I continue, because I want to add some layers, but I'm not going to do that yet. I want to show you something very helpful here in using external references. I'd like to make a copy of this XREF so that I can rotate it and be able to project the front elevation. So from here, I'm going to select copy, and I'm going to select my object, and an external reference is an object. So I click on the external reference. It shows me the reference, and it also shows me the boundary. I do not want to select any more objects, so I enter. And now I specify a base point, and it can be anywhere you want it to be. I click one time, and I bring it over, and ortho doesn't need to be on. And I go ahead and click here for my second point. And it would like me to continue making copies, but I don't want to do that, so I will simply tap the escape key. And now I'd like to rotate this copy of the external reference. So I will select rotate. I select my object, which is the external reference. I enter. And very much the same way that you rotated this the last time when we were editing the file to make it a two-seater, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'll pick somewhere here in the middle and then rotate it. And you'll notice that when I go to rotate it, it's actually showing me the other objects that were currently clipped, but for some reason they come back. They'll go away as soon as I finish rotating the object. So I will turn ortho on, and then I want to make sure that it's perfectly straight, and then I click. And when I do that, notice how the objects disappear. That's just how AutoCAD does things, and it's fine. And now if you wanted to, you can go ahead and move this object, enter, and bring it a little bit closer like this. And then you can now take this line and either, bring it back like this, to stop it, or if you want to, feel free to extend the whole thing across. And I believe what I did is I actually drew two separate lines. So I will go ahead and leave it there. I'll tap the escape key. Because it's currently highlighted, as soon as I go ahead and click on copy, it knows to pick that line. And I'd like to make a copy from this endpoint. And okay, I have to pause for a second because it selected my UCS icon, and I don't like it when it does that. So let me tap the escape key, and let me try this again. Copy, this time without picking the object, select it, enter, and I'll pick from this endpoint, and I'll just simply bring it over here, tap the escape key, and then select the line, pick this endpoint to stretch across like that. Tap the escape key, and I'm all set. My apologies, I didn't expect that to happen, and every so often you could. Here, just wanted to show you this UCS axis. Notice how if I hover over it, it turns yellow. If I click on it, all of a sudden it becomes active. I don't want to get into this right now because it'll take away from what we'd like to do. So I'm simply just going to tap the escape key. Sometimes the grips will go away. If I pan, they stay. Sometimes, They'll go away eventually, just we'll ignore them for now. With that said and done, what I'd like to do now is go ahead and begin drawing my elevations. And to do that, I'd like to introduce layers. And if you look at my example here, you'll see, and if I actually turn off this layer, and this is something that I really wanted to show you, so I'm glad it's coming up right now. Using layers allows me to organize information in my drawing so that I can have the ability to turn things off and on. Those notes that I had on there, they were on a separate layer. So I was able to turn that layer off by clicking on that icon, which is good. And now if I continue, you'll see that I can continue to turn layers off and then turn more off and more like that. But I don't want to do that. So let me go ahead and tap the escape key, and then I'll come back to my layers panel, and I'll click on this icon right here to turn all the layers on. And then I just want to go back and turn off my notes like that, and also my dimensions, and enter. I set this drawing up the same way. This is an externally referenced file, and I drew some lines here to project down. And as I started to construct my sofa, I made sure to put information on the correct layers. So time to set up the layers. And you can see here from my list, if I go to my dropdown, you can see all the layers that I have. And I will show you how to construct these. Let me go back to the other drawing file. In my notes, I did provide that information for you as well. These are the layers to construct, what they're going to be used for. And like I said, the colors will then be used to print so that the objects in the foreground are going to print darker, which is also, we also say heavier than the objects in the background. And then up here, I did make sure to mention about the XREF and also to mention about the XClip. And then also setting the XClip frame to 0. To continue, back to my drawing right here, and it's time to add layers. I have the layer window open here, but I can always toggle it off and then toggle it back on. So go ahead and turn it on. And in my case, I will eventually organize my screen and dock this over to the, or rather anchor it over to the left. But for now, I'll leave it floating here. This is my layer window, and I can add layers here and then organize or start placing information on the layer so that they're organized. Beginning with the first layer that I'm asking you to construct, and that is going to be layer 01. And I use the numbers so that it lists the layers for me in alphanumeric order. And I always want it to show me heavy first, followed by medium, followed by light, and then I put in my guides. Layer 01 heavy, that's going to be the name of it, and this is going to be the color. From this window, go ahead and click on the icon up here that says new layer. You can also type Alt-N. So as soon as I click on that, new layer, it gives me the name and it defaults to layer 1. And if I continue to click on that button, it's going to say layer 2, layer 3, 4, and so on. And notice how it's currently highlighted. That means I can go ahead and start typing. So I'll go ahead and type in 01 heavy. And you know what? I'll make it all caps. 01 heavy. Now, if you look over here, these are the properties of the layers. The layer is currently on. It's currently thawed, but I can click here and freeze it. It's currently unlocked. And it's also currently set to plot. And then the color here, it's showing me the swatch, and I want to change that color. So I need you to click in the swatch. When you click in the swatch, it's going to ask you to select a color. For the majority of AutoCAD drawings, we stick with the first set of index colors down here, index color 1 all the way through 8. And these index colors here, they have a number, but the first 7 are also assigned a name. So color number 1 here is red, color 2 is yellow, color 3 is green, color 4 is cyan, 5 is blue, 6 is magenta, 7 is white, and then 8 doesn't have a name. And moving on all the way to up to color number 256, they will not have names. They're just going to go by numbers. Color for this layer, O1 heavy, that is color number 6. So from the list here, you go to index color number 6, you click on it, and it tells me that that color is magenta. And then I click OK. So you notice that it has changed to magenta. Now what I can do is make this my current layer by simply double clicking on the icon. Let me just expand this a little bit where it says status. The check mark means it's your current layer. So if I double click this one, this now is my current layer. Let me move this off to the side, or actually move off of it so it will auto hide. Is it going to auto hide? No, let me do that. Now if I go ahead and draw a line, you'll notice that it is on that layer. Next layer, if I go back here, I need to do layer number 2. So I click on the new layer icon. This one is layer O2 medium. All right. O2 medium color. And you'll notice before I change the color, you see how it took on the properties of the previous layer. Just keep that in mind. And this will now be index color number 1, which is red, and then click OK. And now if I make that layer current, and I move this out of the way or let it auto hide, and I go ahead and draw a line, I can draw a line here, and you see it's red because it is on that layer. Let's go to the next layer. So back I go, new layer. This one is O3 light, color yellow. And the final one, color number 8. All right. And then I also placed in the notes that you can go ahead and turn off the ability to plot. So that is now set to do not plot. Any lines or objects that I draw on this layer, I will see them on the screen, but they will not print out. In my example, I showed you the guide so that you can see them. Had I set them to do not plot, you would not be able to see this information. So don't worry, I don't need to see your guidelines, and you're not putting in the dimensions. So you're just going to focus on making sure that you project all of your lines down. They're on the correct layer so that they're ready to print. I'll go back to my drawing now. And I never did make that other layer current, and that's okay. I mean, I could go back to the layer manager and I could double click here on this icon, but I can also come over here to my layers panel, go to my drop down and simply select the layer. And now it's my current layer. And now if I draw a line, and I'll just type L, enter, from here to there, enter. I now am drawing on that layer. So what I'd like you to do for now is make your layer guides your current layer, and then go ahead and project lines down. So I'll draw a line from here straight down. And if you wanted to, let it stop right there. That's fine. You can shift right click and make it perpendicular like that. And then tap the escape key, or you could have made it go past the line and that would have been fine. So now I can go ahead and draw more lines, but it looks like I might be able to simply copy this one line. So I'm going to type C-O for copy, enter, select my line, enter, and I'll just copy it from this endpoint to this one, and then this one, and then tap the escape key. And I'll come over here, and all the lines that I believe I'm going to need, I'm going to draw a guideline and bring it straight down. So L for line, enter. Pick this endpoint, bring it straight down. Shift right click, perpendicular, and enter. And by the way, I don't have perpendicular as a running object snap, but if you wanted to, you can come down here, and I'm not using center anymore, so I could turn that off. And if I wanted to, I can turn perpendicular on. And the reason I turn that off is because I mentioned before that you really don't want to have that many running object snaps at once. 4 to 5, pretty much the maximum you should have. Otherwise, you're going to confuse AutoCAD, and it's not going to know if you want that intersection, or let's say, for example, that nearest point to the intersection. And it could be the difference between a perfectly straight line and a line that's just off a little bit. So just be mindful of that. Now that I have perpendicular on, let me click off of that window and go ahead and repeat line. And I can draw this line straight down, and look, it goes perpendicular, enter with my space bar, enter with my space bar again to draw another line straight down, space bar, select the line, perpendicular, space bar again to repeat the line command. And those are my guidelines, and they will not print. What I'd like to do now, a couple of things. And let me go ahead and actually introduce a new command here for you. So first of all, I'm making progress. I'd like to go ahead and zoom extents. So I type Z, enter, E, enter, just to make sure what I have on my screen so I don't forget. And yes, I have those 3 lines up there. Almost forgot about them. That's number 1. The next thing that I'm going to tell you to do is type regen. Regen will actually regenerate the screen, the information on the screen. Sometimes when you're drawing circles, you might see them segmented. Sometimes the information just doesn't look right on the screen. Typing regen and entering will allow you to fix that issue. So I'm going to type regen now, and it does regenerate the screen. It refreshes the video card or the graphics on screen. I throw that in every so often just to make sure everything's okay. Now that I've taken care of that, I can proceed. But before I do that, I'm noticing that my layer properties manager is still sitting here. So let me go ahead and dock that. In fact, let me take my properties window first and go ahead and anchor that to the left like that. And then take my layer property manager and go ahead and anchor that to the left. And you see how they're stacked, right? Properties is here. I move away from it. It will go back and hide. Here's my layer properties manager. Move away and that hides. Before I continue, I just hovered over layer properties manager, and it is showing me my layers. And earlier, if you noticed in this example, when I hovered over layer properties, you notice how it's bringing in the layer of that drawing, the layers that is. But because my sofa and rug is all drawn on layer 0, I don't see that coming in, but eventually you'll see it there, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I just wanted to point this out to you. Time to continue. For some reason, my UCS is still highlighted, and I don't like that, but is what it is. I'll leave it alone for now. I'll zoom in, and I'm just simply going to follow my guide, my dimensions. My sofa is 4 inches off the ground, and it's 2'5" high with an overall height of 2'9". Let me show you how I'm going to draw this, and I'm going to introduce something new to you here. So 4 inches off the ground. So I'll come back to my drawing, and I'm going to zoom in right here like this. What I'd like to do is place it on the correct layer. Now, what is that correct layer going to be? In my example here, I placed that object. You can see if I just hover over it, it's on layer number 2, which is medium. Why medium? Because it's neither in the foreground nor the background, somewhere in the middle. And these are the legs underneath the sofa that I don't quite see. It makes sense for me to put it on this layer. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and make that layer my current layer so I can draw on it. I'll come up here, go to medium like this. And then back to my example for one quick second. And like I said, 4 inches up, and then I need to come across. And actually, no, I'm going to put the legs in, right? Because that's what I just made that layer. So I'm going to come over 3 inches and then draw that 4 inches up. So here I go. Hovering right here, coming in real close. I'd like to draw a line, so I type L, enter. Now watch this. Going over to my drawing aids, I want to make sure that I have turned on object snap tracking. So go ahead and click that on. And with object snap tracking, it's actually going to allow me to track an object snap. So I'm going to hover right here, close enough to that endpoint like that, and then come over here and then slowly track it over. And as I track it over, you see how it's moving me away. And I'd like to be 3 inches away from that endpoint. So I'm going to type in 3 and enter. And it's brought that line over 3, and now I'd like to go up 4 inches. And now I enter. And then enter again to terminate. So what I just did was track from that endpoint 3 inches over. Let me repeat that again. And let's go back to the example, right? So 3 inches over, and then the width on that is 3 inches. Now, of course, I could offset the line. I could copy the line. But I'm here to show you different techniques. Yes. O for offset, enter. I can type 3 and enter. I can take this line, offset over 3 like that. Yes, enter. But let me undo that. I can also copy it. I can type CO, enter. Select the line, enter, and pick anywhere on that line if I want to, like this. Bring it over. 3 and enter. Of course, ortho on is important here, but you know how to do that. What I'm trying to show you what to do here is how to use O-track, object tracking. I type L, enter, and I'd like to track from this endpoint, and I just hover over it. It identifies the endpoint, and now I move across. And notice the distance there. It's giving me a distance, and I'm going to type 3 and enter. So it has brought that line over, or it has started at 3 inches over. And now for the height, watch this. I can go ahead and track this endpoint over. And you see how it finds the intersection of that endpoint. It's tracking it over, and it's giving me the height of 4 inches. And I go, yes, that's what I want. And I click, done. And now I enter. Back to my example. You see how my sofa, this line is actually starting at that location, and it's just coming up, and I could actually use O-track to start drawing that line. So here I go. And of course, I want to place it on the right layer. So I'm going to come over here and select my layer O1 heavy. And now to begin drawing the line, I type L, enter. And now I can simply track from this point over and see how it finds that intersection. So I go ahead and click one time, and now it starts drawing it. And I come over this way, and I'd like it to be perpendicular. So it finds perpendicular, and I go ahead and click and enter. The next thing I'd like to do is go ahead and draw the other leg. You see how it says it's 3 inches over and then 3 inches wide, and it's the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to use a new command, and it's going to be the mirror command. Up here is my mirror command, and I select mirror, and I select my two objects. and I enter. And I'd like to mirror these two objects along the midpoint right here of this line. So I click on midpoint and I bring the line down. Let me turn ortho off for a second. You'll see what it's doing. It's creating what we call this mirror line. So I want to make sure it's coming down completely straight this way, or it could be going up this way. It's going to give me that mirror effect. So I'll turn ortho back on. And as long as it's a perfectly straight line going either down or up, I simply click. Do I want to erase the source object? Most of the time, the answer is going to be no, and it's already defaulting to no. So I simply enter, and I'm all set. I'll continue. I can go ahead now and offset that line up 2 foot 5 inches, or I can actually draw a line 2 foot 5 and then another line over 8 inches. And I think I'll do that. I will type L, enter, and I want to pick this endpoint. I want to take it up 2 feet 5 inches. Enter. Hang on a second, it was tracking, wasn't it? I made a mistake. Let me do this again. L for line, specify first point. I want this endpoint, so I click. And it should, well, it's still saying pick the first point. I want to make sure it picks that first point. And for some reason, it's still tracking. So I have to be very careful with that. I want to pick this endpoint. There we go. Now the next point, let's go up 2 feet 5 inches. And then I simply just come over here and go perpendicular to that line. And then I'm done. I enter. And now let me come over to the other side and continue that. So on the other side, you'll notice, you have to do a little bit of math there because that line is 6 and 6, which is 12, plus 7 is 19, or 1 foot 7. So I just have to come up 1 foot 7 from this point up. Back to my drawing, L for line, enter, start at this point, click, take it up, 1 foot 7 inches, enter. And then I'm simply going to enter just to stop there, take a look at it. And I go back to my example. And it's just a matter of taking it across and finishing this off. So I'll draw a line from this point, or that endpoint, over perpendicular here. It's showing me midpoint. Now I have to be real careful because I don't know if the midpoint's going to keep it straight or not. So this one time, I actually do want to make sure that I'm reinforcing perpendicular. And this is where it happens, right? Where if perpendicular and midpoint are not at the same location, it could be off a little bit. So I'm going to make sure, and I'm going to do a shift right click and force perpendicular no matter what. So it's not going to find the endpoint. It's not going to find an intersection. It's only going to find a perpendicular O-snap. So I simply click and notice how the midpoint's gone. So I click one time and now it goes back. And now it will go ahead and snap to my endpoints or my midpoints, which is what I want. So now I'll just simply click right here and enter. And I've gone ahead and drawn that side of the sofa. I still need to add the cushion, and I'll do that in just a second. Going back to my example here. That cushion is coming up 7 inches and then 6 inches. So let me go ahead and draw that. O for offset, 7, enter. And I offset this line up 7 like this. And then I'll select it again to offset, but not 7 inches. I'm going to type 6 and enter. And then enter to terminate the command. So those are the 2 lines that I have here. And now what I'd like to do is actually offset this line out the distance of 2 inches to show that cushion. So I'm going to offset again type 2, enter, select this line, and offset it out like this, enter. And now here's where the fillet command comes in handy. I could use extend, and then I still have to trim, but fillet is really nice here. So if I go to fillet, it tells me that I can round edges of objects. But if I leave this fillet radius at 0, I'm going to get a perfectly nice square corner. So I click on fillet. By default, if you look at the command line, the radius is defaulting to 0. With a radius of 0, that means it's going to be a good straight corner. So I select this object and then this one, and it completes that for me. I enter to do a fillet again, and I select this line and this line, and then I can go ahead and enter. Nope, I shouldn't have entered. I was already done. So let me go ahead and just tap the escape key. So you see how it's extending out. I'm all set there. And then if I go back to my example, you'll see that I actually need a line coming down to represent that backrest and finish the cushion. So let me do that. So I'll draw a line from here. See, midpoint, not necessarily the point I want. I want to make sure I have that endpoint, bring it straight down here like this. Perpendicular, yes, and enter. And now I will use the trim command. So I'll type in TR, enter, and I'll trim this segment and enter. The lines here are on the wrong layer because they need to be on the layer called light. So let me show you how I'm going to fix that. I'm going to select the objects, this one, and this one. I'll go ahead and enter. No, I'm not going to enter. Now that I have the 3 objects selected, I come up here to my layers and I simply move them, place them onto this layer. And now I can go ahead and tap the escape key. You will notice though that the line actually shouldn't be coming out that far. So I'll fix that now. I'll type TR for trim and enter, and I'll just trim these 2 lines here. And I actually want that cushion as it's sticking out to actually be on that medium layer. So I'll make medium my current layer, and I'll draw a line from here to there, enter, enter again to repeat the command from here to there. And now I'd like this line to go to that layer like that, and then tap the escape key. So I have all the makings there. Now, if I turn off my guides, you can start to see that. What I'd like to do now is I'd like the lines here to change, to be different line type. I need to go into my properties window over here, and this icon here represents the line types. And I'm going to click on this down arrow, and it shows me that I only have 3 line types loaded in my drawing file. So I'm going to click on other, and then from other, it opens up this line type manager. From here, I'd like to load a line type. And the line type window opens, and I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to look for, let's say, hidden line type. So I'm going to select hidden, and I'm going to click OK. And hidden has now been added to my drawing file. And I can go ahead and click OK. I want to take all 3 lines. So instead of simply clicking 3 times, I'm going to use a crossing window. So I go right to left. Anything that crosses through that window is selected. So I click, and all 3 of my lines are selected. And what I'd like to do now is change the properties to hidden. And you see how they changed. They're not the right scale just yet. What I'd like to do is modify the properties a bit more. So I'm going to come over here to my properties window. and my line type scale needs to change. Right now it is set to 1. My rule of thumb is change it to 12. Why 12? Because there's 12 inches in a foot. It's made up on my part. I start with 12 and then I enter. And you see how the line type changes, or rather the line type scale. If you're okay with it, leave it. But if you're not, then change that value. Either increase it by doubling it to 24 or cutting it in half to 6. Give it a try, right? If I try 24 right now, this is what I get. And now there's not enough of the line type there to help me see it. So now I'm going to click over here and I'll try 6. Is that too many dashed lines? Try 12 again. And I'll let you decide what you would like to go with. But always make sure to, number 1, load the line type. And then number 2, when you change the object, make sure in the properties, you set it to the appropriate scale that you want. Tapping the escape key, I can come out. And then it's just a matter of, let's see, turning the guides back on. And I can do that from here. And then I can actually make that guides layer current. And if I wanted to, I can draw a line and go from here and just project it all the way across. And that will help me construct the front elevation.